This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social. Delighted to be joined, as always, by Frank Warren. We're here at Frederick's ahead of Anthony Yarde versus Walter Sequeira this Saturday in Brentwood. How are you, Frank?
I'm good. What about you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Always a good start to the interview when people ask me how I am. So, tell me a little bit about this card this weekend. We're at Brentwood.
Yeah, I think we've got nice competitive fights on there. It's a good card. And I think we're going to see our star in action. Well, we are going to see our star in action. Anthony Yarde. He's up against Walter Sequeira, who I think is going to be a good opponent for him.
Tell me a little bit about that. We'll start at the top and work our way down. Walter Sequeira, not somebody who I'm massively familiar with. Tell me a little bit about him as an opponent and what kind of threat you expect him to provide.
Well, he's a tough Argentinian. He's ranked by box rank, independent rankings. He's ranked above Frank Buglioni. He's ranked above Buatsi. So that's what we've gone for. We've gone for guys, and we've tried to make a couple other fights, but we come up with him, and I think he'd be a good test for him at this stage of his career.
Now, Anthony told me a few weeks ago in an interview, probably a little bit longer than that actually, in an interview that he would like a domestic clash. It's not ended up with a domestic clash, it's ended up with Walter Sequeira. Any reason for that?
Well, the reason we've not made a domestic clash is because I'm making the matches, and the domestic clashes, the two guys I mentioned, Frank Buglioni, we offered him to fight on 2 occasions. He doesn't want to fight Anthony, and as for Buatsi, he just fought a couple of weeks ago, didn't he? Or was it a week ago? So impossible for him to be fighting on this show, even if we could have done a deal. And to be honest, I'm not interested in that fight at the moment. Buatsi said what? I think 8 fights. 8 fights. We've still got a way to go before we want to make that one.
Now, Buatsi, as you mentioned him first, so I'll talk about him. Buatsi last week against. I mentioned domestic opponents, but I'm very coy. You know this, Frank. Anthony Yarde's nemesis, future rival, potentially, we could put it that way. Joshua Buatsi was in action against Tony Avalon last weekend. Did you see the fight?
Yes, I did.
What did you make of it?
Well, he done what he had to do, didn't he? He stopped him, and was it in a round, wasn't it? Got a good body shot, yeah.
With Joshua Buatsi fighting Tony Avalon, somebody who has shared the ring with Anthony Yarde, do you think that is an indication of potentially from Matchroom side at least of a force of that fight, or to sort of bang the drum for a potential Yarde-Buatsi fight?
I don't know what it is. All I know is Anthony done a job on him, didn't he? You can look at it 2 ways. You can say you can compare the performances, or you can say that Anthony absolutely softened him up and done the job on him. He didn't want to know the guy at the end of the day. He done well, Joseph, and so did Anthony in his fight with him. The thing is with Buatsi, he's got a wealth of amateur experience that obviously Anthony's not got, or not had, I should say. But we're just, we're doing what we've got to do. I think a good fight, if you want to talk about, people keep trying to make matches for my fighters, I'll make one for theirs. And I keep saying, so why doesn't Joseph Buatsi fight Jose Burton? It's a great fight. They got both in the same camp, make the fight. Hopefully by the time their fight's over, we can make the winner with our guy.
There is talk about that potential fight, Joshua Buatsi versus Jose Burton. If that fight were to come to pass, is Yarde-Buatsi something that you'd look to make in the new year?
We'll just see where we are at that stage. Who knows? Our man maybe moved on further. He's past British title level. He's ranked, I think one organisation's got him ranked number 1, another one's got him ranked number 2. I'm looking for him to fight a world title next year. That's where we're moving towards, and hopefully that'll be the case. Let them get their stuff out of the way. Once it's done, then we'll consider it and look at it.
Just final one on the Yarde-Buatsi kind of situation, which you brought up first. How big of an obstacle, if any, is Buatsi being, it's an American term that's been made kind of popular at the minute, being on the other side of the street, as it were, and being promoted by Eddie Hearn. Is that an obstacle for making that fight?
Better ask them that question. We've already made the fights that we want to make, haven't we? We've never shied away from making fights. We've tried to make them in the past, but it's never come off. With
Anthony Yarde, he's somebody who's his status is elevating. He's just done your phone is ringing during my interview. Terrible form. We'll carry on anyway. He's somebody whose profile has raised an awful lot lately. He's just done this Adidas deal, this global brand deal. Do you think that with such a heightened public image, as it were, it opens him up to the kind of criticism that he has been getting about his matchmaking?
Look, why is he getting criticism for his matchmaking? I find that totally unbelievable. Anybody can even say that. Or with the greatest respect, you can even ask that question. He's fought guys that have all been ranked above him in the rankings. That's what he's done. Guys who had far more experience, guys who've never been on the floor, southpaws who he's never fought in his life. He's had 12 amateur fights. I'm not frightened of making fights with my fighters. You only got to see on the card. I've got my guys fighting each other. I don't shy away from that. We make them. A couple of weeks ago we made Ohara Davies and Jack Catterall. We make the fights. But no one's going to make the matches to me. He is a fighter that I want to get to the highest echelons. I want him to win a world title. And he needs some more experience and education. Don't criticise his matches. Look at every guy he's fought and look at their amateur experience and their professional experience before they fought him. Because they haven't got an English name doesn't mean they're bad fighters.
Moving away from the main event, we've got Nathan Gorman back on the card. I've just spoken to him. He said that he's not thrilled to be facing Kamil Sokolovsky again. Very hard man. What kind of performance are you looking for from Nathan on the back of Daniel Dubois' performance against Kevin Johnson?
Well, he'll be looking obviously to improve on his last decision. I mean, it's a shame. A couple of weeks ago he lost his opponent. He's supposed to be fighting at Leicester. A bit of problem trying to make a match for him for this fight, but he's got a guy, as you say, tough guy, who he beat last time out. I think he'd just be like to get the fight out of the way and, hopefully, as I say, improved on the previous record and then get himself out against before Christmas. That's where he's at. I think he's the most improved, well, one of the most improved fighters in the country. When you look at this sort of little tubby guy who, don't say little, he's a big guy, but like tubbyish guy who turned pro, was with Ricky. He's changed, his body shape's changed. He's got a tremendous boxing brain, good moves, throws nice combinations. Ricky's done a great job of him, and I think he's going to go strength for strength.
When can we realistically see that fight, Daniel Dubois versus Nathan Gorman? It's a fight that myself included would love to see, two up-and-coming heavyweights. When are we looking at that fight?
I'd love to see it when I can make it for a real meaningful title or a meaningful fight. These guys get another 5, 6, 7 fights under their belts. It's going to be a huge fight. It's going to go from being a fight that you probably put on in a 10,000 seat stadium now to put it on into a 20,000, 25,000 seat place. That's where I want it to be before we make it.
Where are we with Daniel Dubois? Obviously the last time we saw him in the ring was against Kevin Johnson, went the distance for the first time. When can we expect to see him back in the ring?
He'll fight again before Christmas. We're working on the date.
Okay, I was just about to ask what date it was, but you've cleared that up for me. Gary Corcoran.
Got 2 for 1.
Thank you very much. Gary Corcoran versus Johnny Garland. That seems to me like it's going to be a fight worth tuning in for.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, they're two consummate professionals. They both are up for it. They both want to win the British title. It's a vacant belt. I think, as you say, we're going to see something. I think we're going to see a real good scrap, and I'm sure that the fans are going to love what they see.
Now, you mentioned that it's for a vacant welterweight title, the British title. That was vacated by another fighter who's going to be on this card, the returning Bradley Skeet. Bradley Skeet has said a few things about Gary Corcoran. Potentially that's a fight that you're looking at in the future?
Well, who knows? Whoever wins that fight, we may make that. The thing is with as far as Bradley's concerned, Bradley's he's been highly ranked. He's had more than. When you consider his background as an amateur, you consider his professional career. He's now in a position where you can't be hanging around for him. He'll have this one, get out of the way. Then we've got to start stepping him right up. He's got to get back in it. There's been no soft touches. He needs to get out there and make the fights. Or I've got to make the fights that can hopefully get him in a position where he can fight for a big title.
What are we looking to see from Bradley Skeet this weekend? Obviously, the last time we saw him in action was against Kerman Lecharaga in Bilbao, in that cauldron atmosphere. First time he's fought since then, was a devastating knockout defeat. What are you looking to see from him as you push forward for titles in 2019?
I want to see him get his confidence back, get in the ring and get the cobwebs out of his system and set himself up for a big year next year.
Umar Sadiq, Zach Chelli, got a bit spicy today at the press conference.
Yeah, two guys, I had 7 pro fights between them. I think that's going to be a little cracker as well. There's no doubt about that. They're both up for it. They want to see who's going to be the kid on the block, and we will see on Saturday who it is.
Matching these guys this early in their career, is it a case of whoever comes out victorious has a good win on their record, and whoever doesn't, they still have time to rebuild? Is that the kind of thought process we're making that fight?
Yes, it is. Plus, they both wanted it. Both camps wanted it. They kept going on about it. I said, well, in the end of the day, very reluctantly, I'll make the fight, and that's what we did.
Forgive me for playing devil's advocate here, but what's the difference between Daniel Dubois and Nathan Gorman and Umar Sadiq and Zach Chelli?
What's the difference between who?
Between Umar Sadiq and Zach Chelli fighting and Daniel Dubois and Nathan Gorman fighting.
Because the man in the street won't know who Umar Sadiq is at the moment, and they won't know who Zach Chelli is. They'll probably know who Daniel Dubois is, and Nathan's making a name for himself at the moment. The heavyweight division is a little bit different than all the other divisions, and yourself, as you just said, straight away, That's the fight you want to see. And that's the fight all of us want to see in boxing. And it's my job to build it into a fight where both fighters are going to get compensated and get a real good payday for that when it happens. And that's what I'll do. Zach, if I said to anybody I'm making Zach Shelley, with the greatest respect to them, against Umar Sadiq, we know it's a good fight in a trade, but outside they don't. My job is to make this other fight into a big fight, which is what I'll do.
Now, we alluded to it earlier on in the interview, Ohara Davies versus Jack Catterall. Ohara Davies has retired and unretired. I'm not sure about his current status, but what's your thought process on Ohara? When can we expect him to come back to the ring, if at all?
Well, he shouldn't retire. He's got a lot to give, and I hope he's not. And I've not spoken to him since the fight, by the way. He's coming, I think, on Saturday, and we'll have a little chat. He's got a lot to give, Ohara. I mean, it was just a real clash of styles, and it didn't work out. And unfortunately, it wasn't his night. There weren't how can I put it? I don't want to be disrespectful. There weren't a lot of what you'd call real action. It's more like a game of chess, and there was a little bit more action from Jack than there was from Ohara, and that's why he got the decision.
Ohara's still of the opinion that he won the fight and he was quote unquote robbed by the judges. Just your thoughts on that?
He wasn't. I mean, I thought one of the judges scored it quite wide, but I thought he did lose the fight. He asked me. I'll tell him, what do you want to do? You can only say what you see. I thought he lost the fight, but it's not the end of the world to lose the fight. It's not the end of the world. He just did not get going, and I don't know what's happening in his corner. I don't think they read it right. They should have told him he needed to step on the gas, he needed to step up, and he just didn't happen.
He's talked about potentially fighting Victor Postol this time next year, which seems to me quite a step-up fight for somebody coming off a loss. Just your thoughts on that?
Well, if he's fighting next year, hopefully we get him a couple of wins before that.
Fair enough. Moving away from this Saturday's card, Billie Joe Saunders, the first time I've spoken to you since he relinquished his WBO world middleweight title. Just throw it out there. Thoughts?
Well, I think it's disgraceful what happened to him. They didn't apply their own rules in Massachusetts. Bill and us have taken legal advice, and we'll go through the appeal process and be issuing proceedings against Massachusetts for loss of earnings.
When can we expect some sort of resolution for that? These things can tend to drag on.
That we don't know. I mean, it would have helped is when this test first results were first made public, that they'd have called for a hearing straight away. I mean, they did it by telephone anyway, but they could have called for that hearing within 3 or 4 days, rather than a fighter. Forget about the result for a second. Rather, a fighter waiting for 10 days before a fight as to is he going to be fighting or not. That's not right for any fighter's preparation. He passed 3 tests were negative after the event. Why didn't they call for the test and let's deal with it quickly? They just didn't do that. And he's not in a good place at the moment, and he's very upset, and quite rightly so.
What's the thought process behind relinquishing the title as opposed to being stripped of it? I mean, I think there's a misconception that people say that he's been stripped. He hasn't. He's relinquished the title. What was the decision behind that?
He was not stripped of the title because he was not in a position to be quite honest. I didn't want him to fight. He wasn't mentally right to fight, and I think I may have pulled him out to fight. And he would have had to relinquish the title anyway had we have done that. But you can't expect a fighter. When a fighter. It's not just about being physically right. You've got to be mentally there, and you're preparing for a big fight in the other guy's backyard. All this going on in the background. Your local commission, your commission's told you're okay to fight, in as much as the British Boxing Board and Control. You can say you're okay to fight, and then you've got somebody else, having a hearing to determine whether that's going to be the case. All that was going on, and it weren't right. He wasn't in a good place, and I don't think that's good preparation when you're in probably one of the most important fights of his life. So I believe we'd have pulled him out the fight anyway.
Just last word on that. You mentioned that the British Boxing Board of Control, the Massachusetts State Athletic Commission, it's something I've spoken to you about previously with the VADA testing. Do you think it was just an oversight on Billie Joe Saunders' end with the oxylophrin positive test? Because it is on the VADA list.
Everything's on the VADA list. Let me tell you, first of all, I don't think people, I know we talked about it last time, VADA is a voluntary test, okay? That's which the guys agreed to. They have no disciplinary proceedings. As you say, here's the results of this test. Their list of banned substances is everything. And what I mean by banned substances, what they call in competition. So it's what is the date of in competition? When you sign the contract, when you have the press conference, when does it actually, that came in? So for example, you can announce a fight. What happens if you're not signed the contract? There's all various technicalities and ways around it. But the bottom line is, they're not recognised by the British Boxing Board of Control. They're not recognised by Massachusetts as regarding disciplinary proceedings. You've seen their regulations. They go back to basically the overall governing body, which is WADA. So USARD goes with WADA, which is the American anti-doping. That's what they say, what it says in their regulations. To be taking a nasal spray in August and having 2 subsequent tests that tested negative and a UCAD test that was tested negative as well. It's crazy we're in this position. It's just madness. And, we have all this confusion. People say, I don't know who's champion. There's 4 different champions at different weights. We're in a worse position with the drugs. A worse position, because who are we going to go with? There should be one specific drug regime. This is what it is. Not all this different and all different things and whatever. It's not right. There should be one. And that's what the athletes should know, should be working under. Whether they're boxers, whoever they are, it should be one. Not all these different organisations. That can't be right.
Just final word on Billie Joe Saunders. You mentioned his mental state and the fact that he has relinquished his title. Can we expect to see him back in the ring again?
I don't know yet. I mean, I'm seeing him hopefully next week. We're going to sit down and we'll see what he wants to do.
Okay, well, just moving away from that, last word on Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder. See some images of him sparring with Joe Joyce out in Big Bear. Just wondered if you've caught up with Tyson Fury recently.
I spoke to him a couple of days ago. He's in fantastic frame of mind mentally. He's right on the ball. He's happy, and a happy fighter is a dangerous fighter.
Just want to get your thoughts, if possible, on Canelo signing with Dazn. Don't know if you have an opinion on that. I'm sure you do, and you'd like to share it with me?
I just think it's great. It seems like they've done a good deal, and they've taken a big chunk of their budget, haven't they? And they've done a deal, so I understand, with Oscar De La Hoya promoting his fight. So, yeah, it's good. I hope it's a success. I hope it's a success for them. It's a big, their $1 billion budget. I think they've lost. Can you say the word lost? They've spent roughly half of that on Canelo, and that's probably a good. That's more of an acquisition for them than anything.
Interesting segue into what I'm going to speak about next. Espn Plus. This will be shown on Espn Plus. I spoke to Anthony Yarde, very excited to showcase himself to the American market.
It's a great platform for us. They're the biggest market out there in the States. So these guys, all of our fighters who are fighting on there, they're going to get, hopefully by the time they do fight in the States, well, he's already been there once, he fights again in the States, people are going to know he is. It's got the most public profile of any of them, and I'm delighted with it.
Just lastly, Mark Heffron was supposed to be fighting Jason Welborn, was he not? I saw some rumours that Jason Welborn might be fighting Jarrett Hurd. Can you confirm that?
Jason Welborn, I understand, has relinquished the title, so we're working on who he will be fighting, and we'll be making an announcement on that next week.
Is he fighting Jarrett Hurd?
We'll be making an announcement on that next week.
Frank Warren.
It's a British fight. You can't just say who he's going to fight. We have to get consents from the British Boxing Board and Control and so forth. This was dumped on us. We bid for the fight, we won the fight, and obviously Welborn doesn't fancy fighting my man. There's no doubt about it. He didn't want the fight. They've done everything they could to duck out of it.
Okay, well, Frank Warren, there's a queue of people behind me waiting to get a word with you. I will speak to you soon. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social. Catch up with you on Saturday.
Cheers, mate. All the best.
Cheers, Frank.